First of all, congratulations on your first comedy special. How's it feel?
You know, it feels quite funny.
Does it?
I just look at myself and I'm like, bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did it.
It also feels kind of traumatizing because I have a yellow tongue in it from taking cough drops before.
Oh, I thought that was a creative choice.
You know?
No.
I am a person of color, but I tend to not go that far.
It's not that color. It feels like a vulnerable choice to show that you carry sickness into performance and you let us see that part of you.
Well, actually, I was sick right before taping this.
Uh-huh.
And so I texted all my friends, like, what do you do when you're sick and you have to be on live television? Maybe you'll be one of those people I text in the future.
Uh-huh.
And everyone said, like, go get an infusion.
Really?
So I just went to go get an infusion. They're like, what do you want to put in it? And I'm like, okay, give me the ego of a white man who thinks AI can end climate change. Put that in right there.
Yeah.
Give me the confidence to do this.
Yeah, and you perform with that kind of confidence and privilege.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Okay, science matters.
I want you didn't necessarily come from a comedy background. Is that fair to say?
Did you just ask me where I came from?
Oh boy.
In this political climate.
I know. I'm sorry.
Are you gonna ask me about my genitals next?
Well, that was before I was gonna warm up to the genitals. I always like to end with a good classic genitals question. You know, everybody likes that.
That was just me kidding with you. I just know that your community is so worried about getting it wrong and potentially getting canceled.
Yes, we're just trying to be allies.
I can't imagine how difficult that must feel for you.
Do you understand the difficulty I'm having right now? Just trying to walk the road of
You're doing a really good job.
Thank you very much.
Your discomfort is valid.
Uh-huh.
We're just afraid of being murdered. It's not the same, and I don't want to say that. It's not the same.
You don't think I'm afraid of being murdered? I go to Trump rallies every other weekend. Come on! Well, what I find really refreshing and interesting about this special, you deal with big issues.
Yeah.
But you also, you have a quote in here. You said, transphobia is merely a distraction from our shared humanity.
Yeah.
We should be talking about the fact that we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Death, is it real?
I don't know how else to tell you this, but like, I'm gonna die, and you're gonna die.
That's true.
And we've created an entire society that pretends that that's not the case, which is just ridiculous. So people keep on thinking that if they imbibe the blood of their like 18-year-old son, that's gonna stave off death, or like find the next cryptocurrency or something. But you're gonna die. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So actually, the real biological truth in our society is our mortality. And so when people say, we're erasing biology, I'm like, okay, maybe, but just you're pointing to the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so from the perspective of death, I believe that all living is just stand-up comedy. Because death's kind of looking at us being like, oh my God, that's so funny and so cute.
Yeah.
That you think that like that new shoe is gonna prevent you from dying.
Yeah.
Silly little bitch. And so I kind of wanted to make a show that was basically about having to reckon with the fact that we waste so much of our time with absurd antics, like hating other people, judging other people, when at the end of the day, we're all human, which means we're gonna die.
Yeah.
And if we remember that, then we have the potential for profound empathy, because we're all in this together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. There's something unifying about that absurdism.
Yeah.
Like if I were to make a pretentious reference, Albert Camus would talk about imagining Sisyphus happy. That it's an absurd life that we lead. Can you just give me my space? Will you give me my space?
Sorry.
Camus would say, imagine Sisyphus happy as he pushes this rock up, because all of existence is inherently meaningless.
Yeah.
And so reckon with that and then connect with your neighbors.
I identify as a pretentious piece of shit.
So do I.
You are speaking my love language right now. I'm like, Camus, the goat, you know?
I want to quote you back at yourself, and I want you to talk about this too. You also say humorlessness is what loses any campaign for social change. Talk to me about that.
What's really frustrating is most people think that trans people are just snowflakes, humorless, hypersensitive. But if you spend a couple of centuries surviving attempted eradication, you get kind of bored with being depressed. It's just a major buzzkill, you know? So then you just have a lot of time on your hand to do something else, and so you just start like cracking jokes or whatever to survive, and then you begin to realize actually maybe part of the oppression is keeping you miserable, because whenever you're in a space that's comedic, that's a space of possibility and expansion. And so what I started to realize in my own life was there are powers that be that want me to hate myself and to be sad. And what's profoundly rebellious when you're a marginalized person is recognizing that people might have the ability to take your rights, they might have the ability to take away your safety, but they can't take away your joy. And so what humor has become for me is a practice of resistance, of saying, oh, you're oppressing me? Thank you so much for the comedic material. You are gonna keep me gainfully employed.
You see that? It's no secret a lot of people do feel scared right now. They feel like it's a time for social change, activist movements, and I think they can be called, they don't see a space for humor. Do you fear that the people who are looking to make a change in the next regime, whether it's this next administration or just the time that we're in, that they will lose that sense of humor and in fact lose some power with that?
Yes, I do fear that.
Yeah.
But then I hang out with my friends. And I think that there's two conversations happening in this country. There's the conversation we're having with the people that we love, and then the performance bit we have to put on. And what I noticed in my own career is I was afraid that people would not take seriously the critiques I had if I showed how funny I was, which is so ironic. Like, here I was of being like, I came out of the closet when I was 18, and then I was closeted as a funny person, which is way harder, actually. You just constantly have to repress yourself. And then I started to realize this is dishonest, because with my friends, humor is the first point of activation on how we process our worlds. And so what my stand-up became was an imprint of the jokes I was templating first with my friends. It's so annoying. I take out my iPhone. I'm like, I am really funny. I just said this, and then I don't remember the context with which I said that, and it's no longer funny.
Right.
And so I actually think we just need to start being honest. We cannot combat a world that ritualizes lying with more lying. The only way is to operate at a different frequency. And what I think is so honest to the human condition is that at every funeral, someone cracks a joke. And that joke allows people to feel deeper. And if we forget that truth, we forget who we are.
You speak about that. You speak about death a lot. It's funny you say this. Eric Idle was here from Monty Python a month ago saying that exact same thing. The humor that you find in death, in funerals, is sort of our humanity. Looking at the news right now, places like Meta, we see what's happening with Mark Zuckerberg and the threat of a MAGA administration, and they're removing any kind of guardrails they had towards hate speech. How do we combat something like that, in your mind?
So I need to be really honest with you. You've caught me in January, and I take New Year's extremely seriously. Yeah. So I listen to a lot of white women podcasts. And what they have been teaching me is I need to manifest what I want to see in the world. And I don't really have space for negative vibes. Like, no bad energy.
Okay.
So I read that news, and I was like, it's not why is this happening to me, it's why is this happening for me, you know? And so what I actually started to realize is this was actually really brave, because Meta is accusing us of misgendering a corporation, which is extremely serious business. And when you really think about it, it's kind of trans. They're like, who you see me as is not who I actually want to be.
Oh.
It's like a gender reveal, actually.
Okay.
And like, that is so powerful in this political climate. Yeah. I was like, whoa. But then I started to do some research, and I found out that Meta is technically only 20 years old. And that's kind of young to be making such a serious decision. It might be...
That is very, yeah, I mean, they might not really know who they are at this point.
It might cause irreversible damage to democracies across the world. And usually I support freedom, except when it comes to that, you know? I was okay with the name change, you know? Call me Meta. I was like, okay, I can do that. But this just feels like too much.
Yeah.
But then, back to the podcast, I was like, no, positive thinking, no space for negativity. I was like, Mark Zuckerberg is saying masculine energy. Imagine a white man 40 years ago saying masculine energy. Okay, masculine energy, that is the accomplishment of the transgender movement, all right? We are setting the terms of the debate. I feel like he lifted that from a Tumblr post of mine from 2011. Masculine energy, like what the does that mean?
Yeah.
All right? So then I started to realize, like, we might not be winning the short-term thing, but we're winning the long-term thing, because even the rhetoric and the language they're using to oppress us is our own, and that's kind of sweet. Like, what my hope for the Trump administration is that they're going to take this trend, and they're going to not deport migrants. They're going to make migrants hold space for the lyrics of Proud to be an American.
Wow. You have really an optimistic eye towards what's going to happen these next few months.
I'm just saying.
Tell me, there's a name on here that's very exciting to see as well. Your special is executive produced by Christopher Guest.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Okay, so here's the thing. I asked him to direct, and
Yeah.
he said, Alok, we both know you could do a better job directing than me, which is the first time in history that a British man has ever said that to an Indian person.
Yeah, wow. Sure.
I was blown away.
My God,
I
yes.
felt like my ancestral healing. I was like, whoa.
I will take it from you, Chris.
And so I said, but like, I want to learn from you. Like, I want to like, be... and he's like, I have nothing to teach. And so I said, okay, tell me stories about what it was like to be on set. And then that's where the wisdom came. It's just from his storytelling.
Yeah.
And when he was speaking to me, he really, I think, spoke to something I truly believe, which is the kind of sacredness of comedy. That comedy actually is a sacred ritual where we can alchemize and detoxify things that are so profoundly painful and turn them into something beautiful and bountiful. And he said to me, there's going to be a knowing in you that a lot of people are going to doubt, but only you can make that decision, which is how I justified spending hundreds of hours making every single editing decision in my own special. I was looking at every single camera angle and making every single choice. And my manager was like, do other things. And I was like, this is anti-religious because this is a sacred practice for me right now. So I have Christopher Guest to thank for that.
Well, it's a truly remarkable special. I hope people go out and see it. Biology is available now to stream now at alokvmen.com. Alok.